Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ocean Impact podcast. My name is Amelia Helt, and I am joined by OIO co-founder, surfer, ocean lover, and all-round nice guy, Tim Silverwood. How you going, Tim?
Very well, thanks, Amelia. Here we are, the Pitchfest 2021 series. We're powering through. Not many more episodes to go now.
No, we're over halfway through now, and it's just so exciting. And we've got a really good episode today with Jack Hurley from Firetail Robotics. And Firetail Robotics were the winner of the Dicker Data Ocean Monitoring Spotlight Award for Pitchfest 2021. Tim, how good that we have managed to get Dicker Data back again as partners. They're such good supporters of OIO. Oh, it feels fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the Spotlight Award categories for the Ocean Impact Pitchfest are really valuable. They basically tell everyone out there, hey, if you're working on these particular challenge areas, we want to shine a light on you. And so Dicker Data sponsored the Ocean Monitoring Award in Pitchfest 2021. Firetail Robotics were the winner, and they're back again for Pitchfest 2022, which is actually launching on the 9th of August 2022. You can actually pre-register now. But yeah, big props to Dicker Data. These guys, they know data, they know technology. They're an ASX listed, Australian owned company. They have been doing data for 41 years, and we're just so proud that they believe in the importance of using technology to gather data from the ocean for the ocean so we can, of course, make great informed decisions on how to protect our dear planet ocean.
So true. And it's really great to have, the winners of these Spotlight Awards on so that we can get a little bit more of an insight into exactly why, their solution is special and kind of, again, shine the light on them. So today we have Firetail Robotics, and probably the best way to describe them is that they simplify really complex hardware innovation projects, linking together various components so that it's easy to use, easy to deploy, and easy to maintain in the field. And hardware is typically one of the harder areas to have innovation. So, Jack and Firetail have done such a great job with that. Tim, run us through kind of what you think about and your takeaways from their incredible technologies and platforms.
Yeah, what's fascinating about Firetail is, I mean, they're based in regional Australia, quite a long way from salt water. They're on the Murray River in Albury. But these guys do diverse projects in the fields of robotics. But what they applied for to the Ocean Impact Pitchfest 2021 was specifically this new technology they were working on called the Lagoon AI Orb. They've been working with Griffith University on how to get better insights into fish populations underwater, fish size, fish behavior, and all these other different types of knowledge points. Because currently, the technology that a lot of marine researchers use, which is called a BRUVS, a baited, rigged underwater video system, it's essentially just bait in a basket with a camera attached. It's kind of limiting. It's going to have a lot of biases attached to it because you're only attracting certain types of fish. Whereas this kind of technology can go down there, and with AI and with machine learning, it's incredible. It can identify these species and these sizes and abundance so quickly, massively reducing the cost required and increasing, again, that knowledge, which is so fundamentally important so we can make decisions on how to protect the ocean. So, yeah, fascinating technology. I was like, a couple of times in this podcast, I was like, okay, this guy is a few leagues ahead of me, and I'm just going to hold on for dear life.
Yeah, it's crazy some of the things they do, and I encourage everyone after listening to the podcast to head to the website. They have great breakdowns of some of the projects that they've done, and that's really a great example of how they take technology that they've created and hardware that they've created and actually apply it to different types of problems, which is, again, just on its own is such a great innovation rather than having to start again. They never reinvent the wheel, they're just continuously improving. And one of the projects that I just found so fascinating was with the Surf Bee, which is the unmanned surface vehicle that they use to deploy the Lagoon AI orb. They use that for many different applications, but one of them is what you could call coral IVF, where they take that collected coral spawn, I guess, and actually artificially move it around the reef so that it can regrow. And he talked a little bit about that in the episode, didn't he, Tim?
Yeah, look, I mean, you got to talk to these people, and just like you just never know what they're going to start talking about next. So, yeah, this particular piece of use case for their technology was this unmanned surface vehicle deploying coral spawn to aid in the reproduction of coral reefs. And so, I just imagine what it would be like working in that Firetail Robotics office, and the phone rings, and you're like, "Hello," I was like, "Yeah, can you help us disseminate some coral spawn across the Great Barrier Reef?" Sure, yeah, we'll be there next week. It's just fascinating that these people out there that they exist, and I love it.
And he did say that he basically has never been afraid to have a crack at a lot of things, and that a lot of their sometimes their business comes from that they know people who are scientists or engineers or whatever, and they maybe get stuck with or someone asks them to do something and they kind of maybe hit a roadblock, or they just don't know how you would attempt that thing. It's a bit crazy and a bit left of field, and so they generally refer that person or that company or that organization to Firetail Robotics because they'll have a crack no matter what it is. So such fascinating stuff from this conversation. And I think everyone will really enjoy it. So have a listen, guys. Let us know what you think. And again, if you want to pre-register for Pitchfest 2022, you can do that at ocean-impact.org/Pitchfest 2022.
Thank you, everyone. Very pleased to have on the Ocean Impact podcast Pitchfest 2021 series Jack Hurley, who is the founder of Firetail Robotics. How are you, Jack?
Yep, really good, Tim. Very happy to be here on a very cold winter's morning in Albury, New South Wales.
Oh, there you go. Well, your innovation that was recognised as a finalist in the Ocean Impact Pitchfest 2021, and of course the winner of the Dicker Data backed Ocean Monitoring Spotlight Award, was so captivating. It was a great pitch video. And I hear the technology's kind of constantly evolving since what you put forward on the Pitchfest 2021 video you submitted. But I'd love to just hear from you a bit about your solution, and particularly the problem that it is that you're trying to solve through the Lagoon AI orb.
Yeah, look, I actually brought it along as a prop, just a little bit of a close-up view so people can see this is how it was, and you can sort of see it's got a housing with a stereo camera in it, as well as a very high-powered AI system from NVIDIA, as well as a thruster on the back. And that allows it to sit under mainly our SurfB USVs, and then be able to turn left and right to be able to keep something in frame. So it's really interesting where we've come from in this is that we really started the project around underwater. We'll call it underwater AI vision, which means that we wanted to be able to look at fish type, their behavior, sizing was a big thing. So some of our earlier customer-centric design conversations with universities and researchers came down to, we want something that was easily deployed. We want something to do the measurements, like an easy stereo camera type system to be able to measure how big a fish is or something like that. And not really have it too situational. And what I mean by that is how they do it at the moment is they use a BRUVS unit, which is a baited rigged underwater video system. And large federal agencies and some state government agencies in this country use that, and that's a frame that sits on the ocean bed with some cameras and some bait, and then the fish come up and they start trying to work out how to go through many hours of video and eyeball things to try and work out what this fish is. So this is what they've been doing for years, and it's really interesting. State government agencies around Australia have hundreds of hours of footage like this that they just cannot get through. So what we did in the early days was to partner up with Griffith University. who are a world leader on AI tech, or AI tagging and understanding what fish do, their size, their type, and their behavior. And we're not experts in that. We build things and help enable universities and researchers to be able to do stuff like that. So that's where we've come from.
Love it. So people that have seen the pitch video would have seen the technology in action and that wonderful AI work that the Griffith team have obviously helped to develop. Tell us a little bit about where you're at now with the technology and potentially where you're identifying some of those opportunities for your technology that may be a little outside of where you particularly thought you might be focused initially.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, we absolutely adopt the mantra of a customer, centric design approach, and what that means is we actually ask the customer what they want. So it's in R&D land and university land, it was a no-brainer that we were putting up things like this, and it's a pretty big system, but it still hangs under one of our boats and goes up and down on a winch, etc. But really, in the last 6 months, we've got that whole box like this, everything all in one, down to essentially we're talking a stereo camera like that with some smart little processing power on it, to be able to do some basic understanding, tagging, fish ID stuff. So what's happening here is that it's the whole Moore's law approach. As you move along the scale of technology getting cheaper and and smaller, really. So just that AI camera. Sorry, you can see the stereo camera at the front there. Just that cost of that is $1,500. These stereo cameras now are pushing in around $150. So that's in 6 months, and it makes us like we've always got to keep moving the pin along a little bit to try and keep up with a lot of that. But yeah, it's pretty interesting how new tech is coming along to make our job easier, and also obviously a lot more palatable for the customer, you could say.
Yeah, and I'm really keen to dive a little bit more into that customer journey and how that will shape the future predictions of where the startup actually heads. But I'd love to come back a little bit, I suppose, to your personal why. Why Jack Hurley, based in Albury, Wodonga in regional Australia, is really focused so much on technology that can ultimately unlock so many hidden secrets of the ocean and waterways. I'd love to learn a little bit more about your personal why, if you wouldn't mind, Jack.
Yeah, well, it's a long why. I mean, I started out completely opposite to what I do now. So, I mean, I'm a helicopter agricultural pilot. Like I had helicopter companies that we used a lot of chemical, in the days. And, I was pretty young when I got into it, but I saw a lot. Even though we have all the best practices around spraying and spray drift, I'm quite confident that we did our best, the best of our ability at that time to ensure there was no outliers in that field. So I'm pretty confident of the Aerial Agricultural Association of Australia and how that operates. But still, no matter how professional we were, there is plenty of other, contractors, ground spraying, farming. There's plenty of other stuff where I've seen it with my own eyes on runoff and chemical and, just overspray. And it's, not everyone behaves like an aerial operator. We're quite out there, but not everyone does that. So my personal why is I actually feel like back in mid 2000s, I sort of changed my trajectory into technology and started doing more projects around, around thinking more around being, to me, maybe a better human for the planet, and very opposite to what my perception was back in the day. So yeah, look, I take my kids up to the Great Barrier Reef. I've seen what happens out there. I've watched the bleaching. I've actually seen it. It's not as if I'm reading a document. I've watched it happen over the years. So I spent a fair bit of time out of the Whitsundays and further up and down that coast, and when you're really witnessing it, and I'm telling people, I'm dragging people there saying, just check it out. You see, this is visual, it's happening. Let's do something about it. And if my why is about, using, my little technology business in the back of Albury to be able to come up with some, neat technology around inland waterways, and remote sensing inland waterways for water quality. Then I think that, passes across into where our rivers ultimately end in the ocean. And if we can keep our end, and help agency, measure and actually look what's happening in fresh water, then I think that is an instant result into salt water. So that's my why, and this is where I'm heading. So
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing, Jack. So, yeah, just trying to think back to your journey as a pioneer in technology and innovation, and what you're ultimately, working on with this particular piece of tech. What other problems have you sought to solve in the past? And, I suppose you could maybe reiterate really where the story of this particular piece of tech evolved from. Did someone come to you with a problem? Maybe it's off the back of what you did with SurfBee, or what was uh, the real seed which led to this beautiful plant that is growing with your technology with Lagoon AI and SurfBee?
yeah, and I'll just put it out there at the start. I mean, I'm surrounded by some smart people in the room, right? So I call them the smartest people in the room. I surround myself with people who really know how to do things. Not really a pioneer. I'm absolutely glass half full. Everything, it's the Australian punt, isn't it? But I'm pretty well weighted on what I think is going to happen that way. So as far as pioneer, I definitely share my, what we're doing with some very key people in my business. Um, it's interesting, so working with Queensland University in the early days, with SurfBee, we talk a lot about, winching, right? So they wanted to winch something under the water from our boats, and winching is, dropping a 50-meter tether down with something on it. So usually what I suppose one of the normal things to do there is to use some type of environmental sensor, like a Xylem product or something like that, which is an exo product that has a multi-parameter sonde, that has temperature, some of the health of water, everything. So there's lots of different parameters you can set it up for. Um, so it also made sense to put a camera on it, and hence where the AI, underwater housings and AI, the whole idea of an AI camera, and the what's different from a normal camera to an AI camera, without going stereo, is that a normal camera can sit there and data record and throw images onto an SD card, but when you start doing the processing power in the housing, what that gives you is instantaneous results, right? So that was a attractive thing for our clients, like Queensland University, and there were some conversations with QUT and those guys. So we're very R&D university focused, right? Because those guys are busy enough saving the world and what they do. It's pretty cool that they're able to speak to companies like us to build, the vehicles they need to do their job. And that's where we've really carved out a good niche with Queensland Uni and QUT. We also provide the larval bot with QUT up there, which is the bot that runs around and seeds the coral babies, etc. So yeah, so absolutely the need of R&D, but the when you start to talk to corporates, as far as companies like the Xylems and Teledynes of this world, I mean, these guys are, the big corporate end of town that provide, multi-parameter sensing and water measurement to the world. And that's where we've got to look at our split between R&D and commercial activities. So, we're currently in a pretty heavy development sprint on, building out a winch project to suit our surf bees. That's something more customer ready, meaning that our surf bee could go out to a spot, drop a product, a package, a sonde, or a multi-parameter sensor, AI cameras, 50 meters under the boat, sit there, bring it back up, and come back to wherever the person is, whether it's a mothership or whether it's whether it's back to land. So um, and from the commercial side, that's the growth of the business, where the R&D side is absolutely, it's probably our bread and butter. But we're at that we're at that juncture right now where we feel like we've just about got it as far as the what's needed for water quality in Australia.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. Let's talk a little bit more about some of those previous projects that you've worked on and other technologies that you've created in collaboration. I think people listening in would love to hear a little bit about that arc that you've been on, and maybe a little bit of a glimpse at where it might be heading into the future.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're probably fortunate enough to tie ourselves closely to Telstra in the early days of being, Telstra Labs in Victoria. We started working for them as a quick and nimble prototype organisation. So when these guys come up with an awesome idea, say with Transurban, which we've worked with as well, of trying to solve road safety issues for workers, you know, we got into different projects there around building personal wearables for alerting oncoming traffic, right? So when there's a truck about to hit or a car about to hit a work site, then everyone's alerted. We've done projects like that. We developed the cyber cone, we call it, which is the robotic safety cone with Transurban. And that's been an awesome, a bit of a baptism of fire for a small company out of Albury. But being from the bush, we didn't let that stop us. It's quite easy to get things done in the middle of nowhere, we find, than the big city. But also from there, we started working with some pretty big construction companies on AI safety cameras. So we built safety cameras to look over work sites and provide the AI know-how to be able to warn a worker if they were firstly off path or vehicles approaching, etc. So we've had a good glimpse into things that move, and also some visual stuff. And a lot of that really works into where SurfBee's heading as a product. We feel we've made a big transition into water, and we'll just call it water as a thing. And I think that's where we're definitely having our focus on water quality and being able to do more for the planet.
Well, we're pleased to hear that, because it really is a big part of what OIO is here to try and find and support when it comes to those startups who are helping to increase our knowledge and awareness of the ocean, because we all know that if you don't have that knowledge and that data, then you just cannot simply make any decisions that are going to improve the health of the ocean. So we thank you for keeping that focus on water. Tell me, Jack, a little bit more about some of your, could be for the business or for you personally, some of your real achievements. What are some of those sort of success stories that you like to talk about? And that can also be a bit of a precursor to the flip side of that question, which is, well, where are some of those major challenges that you've faced in building a business?
Yeah, I think I'd say one of the biggest impacts we've had to date with Firetail was that we actually won the Pacific Humanitarian Challenge back in 2016. And that was all about helping, islanders and islands under stress on or between, or preceding a cyclone or post a cyclone. So what that means is that we had to come up with a solution for islanders to be able to record damage after a cyclone, and be able to get that information out. So as Fiji, Vanuatu, Newcastle, like these places are remote. There's many islands around the main islands that are even more remote. When there's a cyclone, that has hit or devastated an island, like Tanner Island, you could say, then being able to create awareness by taking photos from the air in a inexpensive way, and then be able to get that data out for agencies to respond, but also for the world to see what is happening, to be able to provide further funding, and create some awareness has been really important. So winning that Pacific Humanitarian Challenge allowed us to build a very low cost foam aeroplane that could be hand thrown very easily by anyone. All they would do is they'd put their Android phone into it, press the app on, and then throw the aeroplane. And essentially, what it did, it had some pre-programmed routes that would go up and down a beach and be able to take some photos from the air. And then from that, it's interesting. Um, you know, we did really well out there as far as being able to test the project and do things. And then pretty well had the solution to being able to get some first responder activity. So that was a huge highlight on seeing the impact on what that would do in an event.
Love that. So just run me through that again. Like, how does an opportunity like that land on your desk? Are you responding to a call for ideas for an application process? How does something like that land on your desk? And then how do you quickly turn that around to become a usable product?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I'm a friendly dude. Like I've just got people who probably have more contact and, who are in those, in the city environments to be able to, co-working spaces and things like that. There are a call for help, right? And then usually when it's in the too hard box for some of these guys, they say, just give Jack a call in Albury. Those guys will sort it. And that's what it's like. It's like, you know, those guys are mad enough to do it, or they'll have a crack at it. And that's one thing, is I have never been afraid to have a crack at a lot of things, and this is another one. But yeah, just good people who understand where our niche is, and understand as well that it's not all for sitting here for trying to make a gain on everything we do. We find it very iterative, our approach to building our business. But yeah, same thing, good people send us stuff.
So it sounds like you love that process, and you love the challenge, no matter where it comes from, to land on your desk, so to speak. How then is that to turn from that? Probably lights your fire and gets you really excited and builds a whole lot of sense of accomplishment amongst the team. But then talk us a little bit about, I suppose, building and maintaining a successful business, because we all know that can be the hard part, particularly if you or others around you don't have that particular skill set or focus. Tell us a little bit about your journey in building a business that can stand the test of time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about my helicopter days, and I think about, like, when I think back on that, I think about how hard it was. It was actually hard. Hard as in being that there was a lot of death in our businesses with helicopters, and there's friends that I don't have anymore from that. That have ended up being killed. And I used to think how hard that game was, and I come out of that very battle hardened. As far as you come out of an industry like that, you've either got to take it two ways. You either are the sort of guy that becomes a very angry old person that is just everything's against them, and you have the battle scars, and there's plenty of guys like that out of those industries that have seen what tough looks like. And then a little bit like me, I used it as fuel, right? And what I did was, I probably, like, I feel like sometimes I work for my friends that aren't here anymore, to make a difference. So that's the other thing, is I use it as a driver. Like, they didn't get an opportunity to go on, with their family and do things like that. So I use that as fuel. So for me, I never accept a no off the person that can't say yes, right? So that's been my mantra in life. Gets me into trouble here and there, but it's just how I'm taking it. People aren't dying on creating surf bees, right? People are like doing this sort of stuff. Like, I've seen what tough looks like, and this is, it's business as usual. So yeah, so that's where a lot of that drive comes from, and why I do that, I'd say. So
That's really, really fascinating, and something I'm sure people out there are sort of responding to in their own ways. But your motivation to have that resilience and perseverance based so much on some of your personal and career history there. That's really fascinating. What about this other question that we love to ask, which is really around 1 to 2 key learnings that you've got to share? I suppose there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast series who are in the thick of building a startup or want to build a startup, and they just are out there, really desperately seeking any sort of words of wisdom or advice to help them on their journey. Do you have anything that you would like to share with people on that journey?
Yeah, and I'm not going to sit here and say everyone is going to win, and that's the hardest thing, and it's a brutal thing because it's right. I've, you know, I think my thing is that there is perseverance, but I think the number one thing I've learned is that you build what someone wants. Right? So that's the simplest thing. You ask them, you spend as much time as you can with your customer, and you drag them along the way and you say, I'm building this. Are you going to buy this? Is this exactly what you're going to buy? And the other thing is that, you've got, it's a real iterative sort of way of doing that, as far as that your customer contact is everything. Know your customer is everything. It's very fundamental to customer centric design, but there's a lot of opportunity out there, but it's no use going and inventing the coolest stuff that you can think of if you don't have anyone to buy it, because you've got to survive. And be careful where you get your money from. So that's the other thing. I love using banks' money. That's the best way of doing it, right? They've got plenty, but it's also really hard to get money. But if you've got a really good purchase order in front of you from a customer that you've worked with or put that 6 months work into, and really have built what they want, I think that's everything. Yeah, touching the customer in all levels, whether it's from the CEO to the guy who's sitting in the ute out next to a river that can give you some insights. That's the most important in the way I feel about it.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Jack. I'm sure that's going to land very firmly with some of those people tuning in today. Tell us a little bit about the road ahead for Firetail. You might want to talk specifically about Lagoon AI and where it's heading in the next 12 to 24 months, or perhaps it's more broadly across the business. But yeah, we'd love to hear a little bit about the road ahead.
Yep. So what we've done really well in the last 18 months is we essentially, with SurfB as a product and Lagoon AI as a product, I'll separate the two, but I'll tell you where they fit. I mean, SurfB has become the number one, you could say the number one tool for on water, underwater measurement in inland rivers. So what that means is, we're over 30 boats just with Water New South Wales, and that's been huge. We've knocked away the biggest corporates in the world on their product offerings, and we've done it here in Australia, out of Albury. We are building boats for state governments that would normally trust the big boys. And I think we've been able to do that by absolutely knowing the customer. And that is, like that's a testament to a couple of guys in our business on really understanding, what they need. So for us, we are absolutely heading into we want to be very dominant in Australia and inland rivers on what we're doing for water sensing. And in saying that, we also are pushing the water quality angle to the next level. So that means that, hopefully these same vessels that we sell, we should be able to add a winch module on there and just, start working on the multi-parameter stuff, and which we are doing. And we think water quality is a number one conversation going forward for inland water, and the price, obviously relates to the price of water and where we are in this world at the moment. So that's where SurfB sits. Lagoon AI, how we tie that in is that, we see the Lagoon AI system adding, essentially for us, it's a module that would be both vision and other parameter module. So we see tying in, vision systems like this into other remote sensing or other sensing opportunities at the same time. And then being able to collect all that data at once. So if you're paying $150 to $200 for a tiny little stereo module like that and housing it in something that that we're more used to, then it's not a big add-on. We feel for that, for a remote sensing opportunity. So that's where Firetail is heading. We're very water focused. We're essentially starting to get away from the R&D guys to really building a product, and and then looking at a launch into the US and Europe and the UK. We are absolutely cutting lunch on what those guys are sending Australia, and we're doing that. And it'd be awesome to get the support to launch out of the country and start getting some of these larger corporates to if we've proven it here in Australia, which is some of the toughest country in the world to do things, then heading it into the US and other countries should be a lot easier. But we don't have a big marketing department. We've got a funky little website that seems to go okay, but we're just at that launch point, you could say. It's been a lot of years coming.
Well, hopefully we can be reaching people all across the world, all across planet Ocean, who are picking up what you're putting down and really fascinated to hear about your technology. Where are we at globally when it comes to underwater sensing and underwater drones? It does feel like there's, even just looking at your recent progress and things downsizing and costs becoming much cheaper. Like, what's happening globally in your eyes when it comes to this market? I mean, this area would have been hugely expensive for so long and out of reach of so many, but I can imagine it's becoming much more available as people and businesses like you and others enter the space.
Yeah, this is a really good one because I liken marine is the same as aviation. So aviation, I used to send up $1.5 million worth of helicopter to take a photo of a house. So think about that. 2004. There was a lot of bread and butter on sending a helicopter and a cameraman up to take a photo of a house. Now, my little kid just bought a $250 little buzzy drone that had a 1080 camera on it that can do the same thing. So it was really interesting how that changed. So I definitely got the hint even back in 2005 that that was coming. So I've attended a few of the marine conferences around the world, and one of the huge drivers for me was absolutely what I saw. I saw overpriced items everywhere, meaning that it's not, you could build things for a lot less. There is a lot of design in marine. Marine's hard, I get it, but that's changing. There's a couple of companies in the US that have done awesome with, the Rolf system. So the, underwater drones, you could say, that have really, taking a bite on the normal big boys in the game, and I think that's opened up a lot to the prosumer, the citizen science as well, which I love. It's awesome that someone can throw a drone off the end of a pier and start looking at stuff. You look over YouTube, and it's actually a really cool thing to watch. So their time is coming. The surf bee of these worlds, we make money out of the surf bee, but we're also considerably less than a big corporate ventures a boat that could probably do a quarter of much as what we can. And that's talking a big game, I know, but it is right. We feel we've got the proof of it now. So times are changing, and I can't wait.
That's absolutely right. And I just think that, so much of the mantra that we've iterated here at OIO is that, you do naturally protect what you love. And we love the ocean when we see it, or we love the waterways, but we still don't really know that much about it. And I just like to imagine a future where we know so much more, and therefore we know just how important it is to protect it because we love it so dearly. So I do really like the idea of this democratization in the future of this data and just opening it up to the masses. I'm sure there's got to be caution to some degree. I did see some recent underwater drone launch activity and thought, gee, I just thought of treasure hunters, or I thought of poachers. I mean, if we open up this technology and people can go out there and scour the depths for things that have an economic value and there's no policing of that, then sure, there could be downsides and negatives, but that should definitely not be a barrier to progress in this area. Would you sort of agree?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we are. It's interesting, even with regulation. The aviation market. The big. I'm pretty sure the big aerial operators of the time. Back in the 2010s, would have absolutely agreed that the drone game is coming and they need to be regulated. So you've got CASA who are all over the drones, and if you try and buy a drone now and fly it within a couple of miles of an airport, there's an issue. So there's regulation in the air. The the marine stuff's interesting. AMSA have started to regulate on surface stuff. So with the USVs, unmanned surface vessels, our boats are, their amps are ready, right? So we have nav lights on them and we have a regulation component to it. But you're right. I mean, I think the real treasury stuff is a bit deeper than a little uh, prosumer drone might get. But you're right. It's like magnet fishing, right? You lose an eye watch over when you do a cliff jump and throw a magnet down and find some things like that is essentially the same as throwing your little hobby drone down there and being able to pick something up. But I love it. I think that good on them. I think it just drives innovation, anything like that. So it's cool.
Love it. No, I think we'll see lots and lots of progress and development in recent times. And again, we thank you for the contributions that you're making with the team. So as we wrap up the podcast, a chance for you to talk about anything that you wanted to get to today but haven't had the chance, and finish off by telling people where they can follow your journey and support you and obviously become customers.
Yeah, so I think one thing I really want to get out there is I want to thank Dicker Data, obviously, for the funds. These guys have made an active contribution to our further development, which is awesome. And to be honest, it's we've got a few developers working on AI stuff. Devs are expensive, like it's all happening that way. But it's awesome that we're able to utilize that funding for the for the betterment of the product, but also help drive that cost difference and being able to sit there at something that's palatable to a user. People can follow us. Look, firetailrobotics.com, where we've got the website. We are on LinkedIn. We will get a little bit more social coming into the new financial year. We've got a few plans on just getting ourselves out there a little bit more, but we really wanted to make sure we've got the right thing. And as far as with the SurfB product, we feel like we've got a very good runway with that. We've got them that do a host of different things, but and some really cool developments coming that way. That there's never been a USV that could do about 30 kilometers an hour, and we've got one in our arsenal that we're about to, hopefully in the next year we'll show people, and I'll guarantee you that's going to get some hits on YouTube. Very different. So anyway, firetailrobotics.com is probably the best place to. It's a website, but we'll get a little bit more socially as we go.
And do jump on YouTube, and obviously the pitch video that the guys submitted to Pitchfest 2021 is out there, and just seeing the SurfB in action and seeing some of that AI in action is really exciting. We can't wait to see the souped up version in the near future, it sounds like, Jack. So thank you again for joining the podcast and for all the work that you and the team do.
Awesome. Thanks very much for having me. And we'll see you again sometime.
Can't take the ocean.